Honkai Star Rail has always been very friendly for its free-to-play players by giving out many amazing free characters and resources. But with the recent release of Dr. Ratio and the fact that every player got him for free, I realized that the most valuable character for free-to-play players isn't even a free character at all. So today, I'm going to explain to you all why the release of Dr. Ratio has solidified Topaz as the most valuable character for free-to-play players to have. So first I'm going to start out talking about what Topaz does, just to give a little bit of an overview before I go into what exactly makes her so valuable for free-to-play players, and really I think for any kind of player, but I do want to focus specifically on free-to-play. So keeping it simple for what she does, Topaz is a hunt path character that has a main focus on follow-up attacks. She has a lot of follow-up attacks in her kit. With her skills of follow-up attack, I think one of her traces makes her basic attack a follow-up attack, and then her ultimate boosts those follow-up attacks that she has for herself. Plus, she has her main proof of debt status, which will increase the follow-up attack damage that an enemy takes from any follow-up attack on the team, not just Topaz's. Which makes Topaz the sort of main focal point of these follow-up attack comps. And you can run her with any other kind of like follow-up attack character, and they can do very well on those teams. So that is just like a little overview of what Topaz does. So now you might be wondering, what does make Topaz so valuable for players? Well, so the answer to that's going to come from how versatile she is. So as we just said, she is the main amplifier and also enabler of follow-up attack comps. And a decent amount of characters in the game do have follow-up attacks, and I also do expect that in the upcoming version, you know, with the Pentacon characters and everything even after that, we are going to get a good amount of characters that have follow-up attacks. And to put a little, perspective on it, Topaz's value for follow-up attack comps is often compared to Kafka's value for DOT comps, especially on the release of Topaz, because both those characters are pretty much fundamental to running those comps at the best of their ability. But outside of Kafka for dot comps, there's only really 3 actually like strong dot appliers, which are Sampo, Gwynaifen, and Luca. And if you dreamt about 2.0, there's going to be a 4th one on the way. But it really is a small amount of characters that do focus on dot right now. And of course, we'll get more over time. But when we compare that to follow-up attack users, outside of Topaz herself, there's almost triple that amount of characters that have follow-up attacks at all. And we do have 2 of them currently being free to play, those being Herta, who you can get multiple Eidolons for and is really strong in pure fiction. And there's also a Dr. Ratio, as we mentioned. So that level of variety is going to allow players to not only focus on follow-up attack characters as a sort of team archetype with Topaz, but it will also allow them to have several characters ready if they do have multiple follow-up characters to be able to deal with whatever content they're facing or whatever content they might be struggling with as a free-to-play player. So I also do want to bring attention to the fact that in the current time that I'm making this video, for the 2 limited 5-star banners that are alive right now, both those characters work extremely well with Topaz. The first banner, as we all know, I'm sure, is Dr. Ratio. And with Dr. Ratio being free as well, every player is going to have access to him, which makes this point even more important. So his gameplay will heavily revolve around his follow-up attack because it does have the highest damage multiplier on his entire kit. So when you're using Ratio, you do want to be getting his follow-up attack a lot. And Topaz, with her proof of debt buff, is going to make his follow-up attack even stronger than it already is, which is very good, especially if you pair that with a support character as well. Then the other limited 5-star banner up right now is a character we've already kind of touched on, which is Kafka herself. And while Kafka is normally considered as like the main focal point of dot comps, and you know, a lot of players run her with the dot centric build, she can also do extremely well with Topaz because Kafka's follow-up attack is one of the more consistent ones in the game, since you always get a follow-up attack once per Kafka turn, which is pretty solid, you know, compared to some of the other ones, because a lot of these other follow-up attacks, they do have conditions attached to them, so you do have to play around those conditions. But for Kafka, it's every turn she has, she'll be able to get 1 follow-up attack when an ally basics. And to run Kafka on this team, instead of running her with that dot build, you'll want to run her with like a more so kind of main DPS standard kind of build with like crit rate, crit damage, that kind of build for a Topaz team. And then that'll have more of a focus on her follow-up attack as opposed to her dot application, which can still work extremely well because those follow-up attacks will all benefit from Topaz's Proof of Debt increasing follow-up attack damage as well. And I also do want to point out some other insanely strong follow-up attack characters, being Blade, Shui Yi, and Jing Yuan. But realistically, if you have any follow-up character, they're going to be able to work extremely well with Topaz, and having multiple of them will just let you decide who you're going to run depending on what content you're doing as well. So yeah, that's really why I feel that with Topaz's versatility, she ends up being so valuable in so many situations, even though the game is definitely progressing more towards having multiple enemies up, which is a bad thing for a hunt character for sure. But because Topaz can enable so many different options, you'll still be able to do very good in those fights that are going to have multiple enemies anyway. So with all this in mind, you might be thinking about whether or not you should pull for Topaz when she gets a rerun banner. And while every player situation will be different, so I don't want to give like blanket answer, I feel like there's two main things you should consider before pulling for Topaz. And this is given that you have enough resources to at least decently invest in her to make her work for your account. So the first thing I want you all to consider is whether or not you're going to enjoy her gameplay, because I know in my experience for Topaz, and the reason I skipped her, is I didn't really feel as excited about her gameplay, but from testing her out with characters that have come out after her and over time, I have enjoyed her gameplay a bit more. And I also don't ever recommend players to pull for a character just because they're good. Like, I know I make like should you pull videos and everything like that, but the fact of the matter is, especially for a free-to-play player and someone who is actively trying to have fun with the game, you're gonna have just a worse experience if you're only pulling for meta or only pulling for good characters because they're good. So definitely do make sure that you're gonna enjoy using Topaz before you even consider putting in pulls for her. And the second thing that I recommend that you consider before pulling for a Topaz in the future is to think about how much her and her follow-up comps will actually benefit your account. Because I know for a lot of free-to-play players, they might be struggling with certain in-game content, whether it be MOC, Pure Fiction, even the expansion module and the Swarm Disaster for the Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears. I do think that if your account can get through most of the endgame content and you're not really like struggling too much outside of maybe like Swarm Disaster or Golden Gears, if you haven't gone through all those yet, I do think that Topaz and having a whole new archetype for your team is not really like a need for you, but it could still be beneficial regardless. But if you are struggling and I feel like you need more damage on your team, and that's the main reason why you haven't been able to clear through some of the difficult content in the game, then I do think that Topaz would be an amazing pull for you. And considering that we all do have Dr. Ratio, Topaz is going to be beneficial in that team as well, because you run Topaz, you run Dr. Ratio, you run another debuffer, and then you run a sustain, and that team is going to be absolutely ridiculous. So now that every player has an insanely good follow-up character in Dr. Ratio, are you guys going to be pulling for Topaz when she gets a rerun in the future? Definitely let me know in the comments down below. And I really just wanted to highlight Topaz after testing her out with Ratio, because her benefits for Topaz are absolutely crazy. Or not, her benefits for Ratio, I mean, were absolutely crazy. And I really do, recommend if someone's out there watching this and you're thinking about using Ratio a lot, or if you're using a follow-up attack character, Topaz is just going to make them so much better. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you do plan to pull for Topaz later, and also what you think about her in the current state of Honkai Star Rail. But with that, I want to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed and haven't already, definitely be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, all that fun stuff. But I will see you all next time.
Bye.